We're not your family. Leave and go back home. On our road trip with my husband, Joseph, and his parents, we pulled over at a rest stop. Stepping out of the RV, Joseph surprised me with these hurtful words. What? Wait, what did you say? It felt like he was someone else entirely, not the caring husband I knew. Seeing my shocked expression, the three of them smirked, and Joseph started driving the RV away. I couldn't believe it. They wouldn't leave me stranded out here. In a panic, I dialed a number, hoping for help, but my mother-in-law's response left me speechless. Did you really think you were coming with us? How audacious. Please don't make a scene and come back. I was excited about our trip. Sorry, but we can't turn back on the highway. And remember, you're not really family, you're just my son's wife. It's time you understood that. We're going to enjoy ourselves without you. As the call abruptly ended, the RV shrank into the distance until it vanished from sight, leaving me stunned. The words, "You're not really part of our family," stabbed deep into my heart, causing intense pain. It was awful. They had me do all the preparations, only to hit me with this. Bitterness and heartache overwhelmed me. Helpless, I had to call a taxi and head back home. I'm Allison, 31 years old, married to Joseph, who's the same age. We got married 2 years ago, and Joseph bought us a house when I didn't want to live with his parents. It's close to their place, but I prefer it to living with them. Still, they're quite demanding, always asking me to run errands or clean up after them. It can feel like harassment sometimes. But Joseph always apologizes for their behavior. I try to endure it. His parents care a lot about what others think, so they treat me well in public. I have to be careful not to say anything negative about them. But deep down, I've always hoped to understand them better someday. But being abandoned by my husband left me reeling, and it took me a while to recover. The idea of going camping came up a week ago when we visited his parents on our day off. While cleaning the storage room, I stumbled upon a lantern. "Do you guys go camping?" I asked. "Huh? What do you mean?" My husband's parents seemed surprised. "Oh, that. We bought it just in case of a power outage. We forgot we had it." "I see. My dad loves camping, and I used to go with him a lot. So I wondered if you guys were into it too." When I mentioned my dad's enthusiasm for camping and his RV, my husband's eyes lit up. "That sounds great. I've always wanted to try it. Let's go on our first family camping trip next week for a night and 2 days. Allison, can you rent an RV? My dad loves his RV and takes good care of it, so I'm not sure if he'll lend it to us." "You'll have to convince him." When I hesitated, my husband pleaded. "It's our first time camping and we don't know what we need. It would be safer to borrow your dad's RV. Plus, I really want to make my parents happy with a fun camping adventure. Please, Allison." With him asking so earnestly, I couldn't refuse. I went straight to my dad's place and laid out the situation. To my surprise, he was all for it. "Really? That's wonderful. I thought you might hesitate, considering how meticulously you care for it. But if it's for you, Allison, I'm more than happy to lend it, and it warms my heart to see you trying to please Joseph's parents. Here, take this whole camping gear set so you can enjoy your first trip. These items are beginner-friendly, perfect for you." My dad carefully selected gear and explained everything. It meant a lot to me to see how much he cared. I felt a surge of happiness. Maybe this camping trip could help me bond with my in-laws after all. "Okay, I'll get everything ready," I promised. I booked a campground with power access and a nearby hot spring. When I shared the news with my husband and in-laws, they were thrilled. "We're so lucky to have you, Allison. I can't wait," exclaimed my husband. "I'm glad to see you're excited," his parents chimed in. On the day of the trip, I hopped into the RV with my husband, bubbling with anticipation. We hit the highway, heading for the campground. My heart raced with excitement, but as we drove, my mother-in-law began making demands again. "Joseph, I'm thirsty. Can we stop at the interchange?" "Mom, I brought drinks. You can choose one from here," my husband replied. None of them satisfied her. "As my daughter-in-law, you should know what I like," she scolded. I'm sorry," I muttered. Stepping out of the car at the interchange to buy her a Diet pepper, as she requested, I was stunned when my husband spoke in a cold, unfamiliar tone. "Allison, you're not part of our family. Go home now." "Excuse me, what? What's gotten into you?" He seemed like a completely different person. He wasn't the Joseph I knew, the one who usually cared for me. Shocked and bewildered by his words, I watched as they laughed and the RV pulled away. abandoning me in the middle of nowhere. Was this some twisted joke? Panic rising, I made a call, only to be met with a shocking response from my mother-in-law. You really thought you could join us? How bold of you. Remember, you're not part of our family. Bye, we're going to have a great time without you. Stunned, I stood there, staring at the phone after the call abruptly ended. How could they? They had me do all the preparations only to leave me behind. What was Joseph thinking? Bitterness and sadness flooded over me, but I couldn't confront them. Instead, I called a taxi and went home. The next day, my husband and in-laws returned from their camping trip, chatting excitedly about their adventures. Not once did they apologize for leaving me behind. When I questioned them about it, their response was astonishing. I stood up for you, Allison, and they treated you so unfairly. It's ridiculous. We're not letting this go. I refuse to let them get away with it. We're going to get even. How? I've got a plan up my sleeve, and I know just the perfect spot for camping. Listen closely, my amazing dad. It's foolproof. With my father's words echoing in my mind, I returned to my in-laws' home, where my husband and his parents were still buzzing with excitement from yesterday's trip. It was the perfect opportunity to set them up. I put on a gentle smile, hiding my true feelings, and addressed them in a calm tone. I found an even more incredible spot than yesterday's. The autumn leaves are stunning right now. Why not go all out with a proper camping trip instead of staying in the RV? We could set up a tent, have a barbecue, and soak in the scenery. At night, the sky is filled with stars. Really? Where's this spot? It's a secret place I want to keep just for us. Can I come along as your wife? That sounds fantastic. It'll be a blast. Since it's a secluded area, I'll drive. I'll play my part as your wife and as my in-law's daughter-in-law. Can I join you guys? As expected, my husband and his parents were thrilled and agreed to let me join them. The following weekend, we decided to go camping again. True to form, they left all the preparation to me, and their nagging about discipline only intensified each day. I held on to my secret plan, meticulously arranging my revenge, and the day of our trip finally arrived. I borrowed an RV from my father, drove to a secluded campsite, and my husband and in-laws were thrilled. Wow, it feels like our own private getaway. They eagerly scoped out the surroundings, thrilled by the new setting. Let's take a walk and soak in the scenery, I suggested. Sounds good. Enjoy your walk. Come on, let's go. I ushered them off with a smile, then turned my attention to setting up. About 30 minutes later, my husband called in a panic. We're lost. I can't find your dad's RV. I'm heading back home with it. What? What do you mean? Don't worry. I left you with the essentials for a real camping experience. It was part of the plan my father had come up with. He thought it would be good for them to try some rugged camping, like being on a deserted island instead of a cushy campground with electricity and nearby hotels. You should set up your tent soon and gather wood for a fire. I know you don't have a lighter, so you'll have to start the fire the old-fashioned way. I left a pot so you can at least cook some rice. You left us behind. You were the ones who said I wasn't part of the family and shouldn't come camping with you. So I dropped you off at the campsite and sadly went home. Isn't that what you wanted? My husband was momentarily speechless, struck by my reasoning. Enjoy your camping trip with just your precious family, I retorted before almost ending the call. But my husband, consumed by rage, erupted into a tirade. Don't be ridiculous. Come back now, or I'll divorce you. Fine, let's get divorced. You'll regret it when you're stranded on the highway and find my father's beloved RV trashed. I've had enough of living with your disrespectful parents. And you'll be the one regretting it, you fool. I snapped back, feeling utterly repulsed by his behavior as he abruptly hung up. I was nearby, but I had no desire to go pick them up. Later my husband called again, his tone drastically changed, his voice trembling with confusion. I can't figure out how to set up the tent. It's raining and my parents are getting mad. And it's getting cold. What do I do? Already regretting it because it's cold. That was fast. Why not search for tent setup tutorials on YouTube? Forget about the tent. My dad yanked it too hard and tore it apart. Allison, you've had your fun. Now get yourself together and come pick us up. I'm not coming. If you walk for about an hour, you'll hit a main road. If you're not camping, then come down here with your stuff. What? Just because I'm asking nicely doesn't mean you can act all high and mighty. Realizing this was my husband's true colors, my feelings for him had cooled completely. All I could do was sigh. Forget it. I'm going to ditch all this useless stuff. Just wait till we get home. That's private property. Dumping anything here is illegal, and you'll get sued for it. There's a sign clearly saying no littering. I don't care. My husband's tone was firm, showing doubt about my seriousness regarding divorce. I had to make him see reality. After the divorce, I'll be seeking compensation for the emotional distress caused by all the harassment you've put me through. What? Divorce? Is this? I'm serious. Our conversation from the time I was abandoned on the highway is recorded on my dad's RV dashcam. So you can't deny it. And I've recorded the conversations of your harassment afterward too. Let's calm down. We don't have any savings because we've been paying the mortgage. If you leave, I won't have anyone to cook and clean, which will be a problem. Think before you speak. I'm not your maid. If you refuse the divorce, I'll take it to court. It'll become a big issue, and everyone in the family will know. My husband, always mindful of others' opinions, fell silent. I could hear his parents fussing in the background, but it no longer mattered to me. After that, my husband tried to start a sentence with a "you know," but the call abruptly ended. Soon after, my in-laws began bombarding me with calls, but I ignored them all. Eventually, the calls ceased, likely because their phones ran out of battery. My father's revenge plan had worked like a charm. On my way home, I swung by to pick up the divorce papers, filled them out, and left them on the table before heading back to my childhood home, where my caring father lived. Interestingly, it took my husband and in-laws 3 hours to descend the mountain, a journey that usually only took one. You should have used Google Maps instead of bothering me with calls. How foolish. My husband, driven by desperation to make me stay, stormed into my parents' house, his fury palpable. "Allison, come out here now. I'll show you what happens when you defy me. If you've got something to say it to my father. He's pretty steamed, so watch out." My burly and imposing father confronted my husband at the door, giving him a piece of his mind and putting him in his place. Additionally, they left their tent and camping gear in the mountains, resulting in a lawsuit for illegal dumping filed by the mountain's owner. The one who filed the lawsuit was my father, who had inherited the land from my grandfather. With numerous cases of trespassing and dumping occurring, security cameras were installed, revealing the culprits responsible for the mess. Now, we wait to see what consequences they'll face. After finalizing the divorce, I demanded and received $1 million each from my husband and in-laws for the emotional distress they caused me. Struggling to keep up with their mortgage, my husband's house was foreclosed, and he now resides with his parents in their rundown home, living a modest life as a family of 3. But, as they say, there's no point crying over spilled milk. I returned to my former job before marriage, regaining the lifestyle that suits me. Next month, I'm planning a camping trip with my parents, and I'm certain it'll be an enjoyable experience.